This happened back in 2001. I was working as a truck driver back then. Long hauls, cross-country routes, nothing fancy. It was a lot of long nights and bad diner coffee, but the pay was decent and I didn't mind being alone on the road. This one night I was driving through Nevada. You ever been out in the middle of Nevada at like 2 in the morning? It's empty, like really empty. Miles and miles of desert and highway with not much in between. Sometimes you'd go 30 or 40 minutes without seeing another car or a single light. So anyway, I was about halfway through my shift. The plan was to pull over at a little gas station I'd stopped at before. It wasn't big, just one of those small, old stations off the highway. The kind with a single pump and a tiny convenience store that mostly sold jerky, soda, and smokes. The guy who ran it was usually asleep in the back, but the lights stayed on 24/7. I pulled in around 2:20 a.m., give or take. Parked the rig, got out to stretch, and started fueling up. The place was totally empty, like usual. No other cars, no sound, just the hum of the gas pump and the wind blowing through the desert. The air felt dry, like it always does out there. Cool, but still. About halfway through filling up, I noticed a car coming down the road toward the station. It was an older car, looked like a late 80s sedan, kinda beat up. It pulled in real slow and came to a stop near the other side of the lot. Not at a pump, just stopped. A woman got out. She looked nervous, I guess. Kept glancing around, moving quick. She didn't make eye contact or wave or anything, just walked straight into the store. Now, I'm not the type to get involved in people's business, but something about the way she was acting, it just didn't sit right with me. She didn't look drunk or anything, but she was twitchy, like she was afraid of something. I finished fueling up and walked inside to grab a drink, and she was up at the counter, talking to the guy who worked there. But here's the thing. She wasn't talking loud, like really quiet, barely above a whisper. I couldn't hear a word she was saying. The clerk looked kind of confused. He kept leaning in, asking her to repeat herself. I grabbed a soda from the fridge and waited a few feet back, giving them space. That's when I noticed the woman kept looking over her shoulder, like constantly, like she expected someone to come through the door any second. She looked scared, real scared. After another minute, the guy behind the counter said something like, "Hold on, let me check something," and walked toward the back room. The woman stood there, arms wrapped around herself, still glancing at the windows. Then, right as the clerk disappeared into the back, the door opened. A man walked in. Now, I don't know how to explain this, but something about him just felt off. He wasn't threatening exactly, but there was this weird stillness to him, like his movements were too smooth, too quiet. He walked straight over to the woman, didn't say anything, just reached out and grabbed her arm, kind of firm but not violent, and started leading her out of the store. She didn't fight him, she didn't even speak, just lowered her head and followed. I looked over at the clerk's door, but he was still in the back, so I just stood there, kind of frozen, watching. They walked out, got in the car, and drove off. Same slow speed, like nothing urgent had just happened. The clerk came back a minute later, holding some kind of logbook. I asked him what that woman wanted, and he just looked at me confused and said, "What woman?" I thought he was joking, so I said, "The one who just left, with that guy. She was talking to you at the counter." But he just kept looking at me, totally serious, and said, "Man, no one's been in here all night except you." I laughed at first, like, okay, maybe he just didn't notice her. But I could tell by his face that he wasn't messing with me. He seemed genuinely confused. I told him exactly what I saw, even pointed to the spot where the car had parked. He stepped outside with me, looked around, then said something that gave me chills. He said, "That car hasn't pulled in here in years." I asked what he meant, and he told me, real calm, like this wasn't even the first time. He said, "There used to be a girl who came here, looked just like the one you described. Years back, she was found out there in the desert, picked up by the wrong guy, never made it home. Some nights people say they see her, trying to get help, asking the clerk something, and then someone always comes and takes her away again." I didn't know what to say. He wasn't laughing. He didn't even seem surprised. He just stood there for a second, then went back inside like it was just another night. I didn't sleep well after that. I kept thinking, What if I'd said something? What if I'd stepped in? Could I have stopped it? But I don't even know if what I saw was real. The camera footage apparently didn't show her. I asked. It only showed me standing in line alone. I still drive sometimes, not as much as I used to, but I don't stop at that gas station anymore. Not because I'm scared of what I saw, but because I don't want to see her again. This happened to me back in maybe 2009 or 2010, around that time. I was in my early 20s, still kind of figuring life out. I worked part-time at this little gas station just off the highway in a small town. It was one of those 24-hour places, but honestly, hardly anyone ever came in past midnight. Mostly truckers or the occasional road trip family looking for snacks or directions. Anyway, I used to work the overnight shift sometimes, midnight to 6. I didn't mind it, really. It was quiet, I could listen to music, maybe read a bit if no one was around. Boring. Yeah, but easy money. This one night started out completely normal. Nothing weird. No weather, no power issues, no drama, just a regular, calm night. I remember it was around 2:15 in the morning. I was sitting behind the counter, watching some dumb infomercial on the little TV we had mounted in the corner. And then the phone rang. Now, that might not sound weird, but let me explain something. That phone never rang, especially not at that hour. We didn't really get calls, and if we did, it was usually just the manager calling in the morning to check in or something. But this was different. It wasn't the normal ring either. It was slower, kind of distorted, like the sound was dragging, just slightly off. It caught me off guard. So I stood up, walked over, and picked it up. I said, "Hello, gas station," like I always did. There was a pause, no sound, no static, just silence. I said hello again, still nothing. I was about to hang up when I finally heard something. This soft voice, almost like a whisper, it said, "He's outside." That's it, just those two words. "He's outside." I didn't know what to say. I kind of froze for a second, then asked, "Who's outside?" But the line had already gone dead. I stared at the phone for a few seconds, confused. Thought maybe it was a prank or someone drunk calling the wrong number. I hung up and looked out the big glass windows that faced the pumps. At first, I didn't see anything. But then I saw someone. There was a man standing by the far pump, just standing there, not moving. No car, no lights, just him, all alone, under that flickering gas station light. He wasn't pumping gas, he wasn't looking at the price sign or walking inside, just standing perfectly still, like a statue. He had on a dark hoodie, jeans, couldn't see his face from where I was. He had his back to me, kind of angled sideways, but I could tell he wasn't looking around or doing anything, just standing. I watched him for a while, maybe a minute. He never budged. I thought maybe he was waiting for someone, maybe his ride dropped him off, or maybe he was just out of it. I was about to step outside and ask if he needed help, but then I remembered the phone call. "He's outside." That voice. It didn't sound like someone warning me as a joke. It sounded afraid, like they wanted me to know something was wrong. So I stayed inside and just watched. A few minutes passed. He still hadn't moved. Then, suddenly, he turned. Not fast, real slow. And I finally saw his face. Or, I don't even know if you could call it a face. There was something wrong with it. I don't know how to explain it. His features didn't sit right, like they were shifted slightly off center, like if you took someone's face and just rearranged the pieces a bit. But the worst part? He was smiling, a huge, stretched smile, too wide for his face. It didn't look right at all. It looked fake, like someone trying really hard to copy what a smile should look like. I backed away from the window. I didn't know if I should lock the door, call someone, or just stay hidden. I remember crouching behind the counter and just sitting there for a second, breathing real slow, listening. Then the phone rang again. Same weird ring. That dragging, slow sound. I let it ring once, twice, then picked it up with shaking hands. Again, nothing at first. Then the same whispering voice came through. Real quiet. "Don't let him in." That's all they said. Then it clicked off. I was freaking out at that point. I stayed down behind the counter, peeking through the bottom of the window. The man was now standing closer. Not at the pump anymore. He had walked up quietly to the front of the store, just out of the reach of the motion lights. He was just standing there, looking at the door. But here's the thing. He didn't try to open it. He didn't knock. He didn't shout. He just stood there, staring and smiling. I stayed like that for maybe 10 minutes. Felt like forever. I never moved. Just kept my eyes on him. And then, just like that, he turned and walked away. Didn't run, just walked calmly into the darkness. Gone. I waited another 15 minutes before I stood up, locked the doors, double-checked them. Then I called my manager and told him I was closing early. I made up some excuse about not feeling well. He didn't argue. When I finally went outside to get to my car, there were footprints all over the lot, but not normal ones. Bare feet, no shoes, and they were long, too long, like they weren't shaped right. I never worked another night shift at that station again. I asked to switch to day shifts permanently. I never told my manager the full story, just said I was done with the overnight schedule. I was working the late shift at a gas station just off a two-lane road out in the middle of nowhere. It was the kind of place that mostly just saw locals during the day and the occasional traveler at night. We had two pumps, a tiny store with snacks and drinks, and a single bathroom out back. I was on alone that night, like usual. It was a Thursday, I think. Maybe around 1:30 a.m. The night had been real quiet. A couple of cars earlier in the evening, but nothing since around midnight. I was just kind of leaning behind the counter, half watching this little portable TV, half scrolling through my phone. Everything was still. You could hear the hum of the fridge coolers and the buzz from the ceiling light. Outside, pitch dark. No moon that night. Just black highway and trees. So I'm sitting there, and then I hear the bell. The little ding that goes off when someone opens the door. I look up, and this woman walks in. She looked pretty normal at first, maybe early 30s, wearing jeans and this pale blue hoodie. She had dark hair tied back, looked like she'd been driving for a while, just had that tired look, you know? She didn't say anything at first, just walked slowly up the nearest aisle. I figured she was probably just looking for snacks or maybe a drink. But then I noticed something strange. She never looked at the shelves, never picked anything up. She just walked slowly down the aisle and then stopped right in front of the cooler door that had the drinks in it. And then she just stood there, like completely still. At first, I thought maybe she was deciding on something, but she didn't open the cooler or anything. Just stood there facing the glass, not moving. I sat up straighter, trying to get a better look. And then I realized she wasn't looking at the drinks. She was looking at herself in the reflection. Now, that cooler door, it's one of those glass ones where when it's lit up inside, you can kind of see your reflection if you're standing in front of it. Faint, but it's there. And this woman was just staring at her reflection, not blinking, not moving, not even breathing, as far as I could tell. It gave me this weird feeling in my stomach, like when something's off and you don't know why yet. I cleared my throat a little, trying to make some noise, see if she'd react. She didn't, just kept staring. So I called out, real casual, "You doing all right over there?" She didn't respond, didn't move, just kept staring. I was about to come around the counter when she suddenly turned, fast, like someone snapping out of a trance. She looked right at me and smiled, but it didn't feel right. It was this wide, flat smile, like she was forcing it, like she didn't really know how to smile. And then, just as quick as she turned, she walked straight to the counter. No snacks, no drinks, nothing in her hands. I asked, "Can I help you with something?" And she said, "Just passing through." Her voice was quiet, like almost too soft to hear. I said, "All right, you need gas or anything?" She shook her head, still smiling. I was starting to feel really uneasy. Her eyes, they didn't blink, just stared straight at me, unbroken. Then she said something weird. She asked, "Do I look like myself?" I kind of froze. I said, "Sorry?" She repeated it. Same flat tone, "Do I look like myself?" I didn't know what to say. I kind of laughed nervously and said, "I guess so." She nodded slowly, that smile still on her face. Then she turned around and walked back toward the cooler. This time I stood up and stepped around the counter a bit to keep an eye on her. And that's when I noticed something that still gives me chills. She walked back to the cooler and started staring at the reflection again. But here's the thing. Her reflection didn't match her. She raised her hand and the reflection didn't move. She tilted her head and the reflection stayed still. It was just standing there, staring straight back at her with that same wide smile, frozen. I swear to you, I watched her move, but her reflection didn't. I rubbed my eyes, blinked, looked again. Same thing. Her body moved, her hand twitched, but the reflection in the cooler glass didn't follow. It just stared. And then the reflection smiled wider, like the face in the glass pulled that grin even further, while the real woman just stood there. I took a step back. I was about to call out again when she turned around fast and started walking toward the door. She looked at me as she passed and said, real soft, "He's coming next." Then she walked out. The bell dinged as the door closed behind her. I rushed to the window, looked outside. There was no car. Nothing. She was just gone. No sound, no headlights. Just empty road. I stood there for a long time, watching the dark. Then I went back to the cooler slowly. And when I looked at the glass, I saw my own reflection. Only, for just a second, I could swear it wasn't moving with me. I blinked, and it was fine. But that second felt wrong. I closed the store early that night, locked every door, sat behind the counter with the lights on until morning. Nobody believed me when I told them, not even my coworkers. They said I was tired or maybe half asleep. But I know what I saw, and ever since that night, I don't trust mirrors, especially when I'm alone. This happened to me about 5 years ago. I was living in a small town at the time, nothing too special, just a quiet place with a few gas stations, a couple of fast food joints, and a lot of empty roads. I was driving back home from visiting a friend who lived about an hour away, and I ended up taking the long way back because of some road work. It was late, like past 1 a.m., and I was running low on gas, so I pulled into this little gas station I'd never been to before. It wasn't one of the big chains or anything, just one of those older stations with a flickering sign and only two pumps. The lights were on, but it looked kind of run down. Still, it was the only open place around for miles, so I figured I didn't have a choice. I pulled up to the pump and got out. The air was really still, like almost too quiet. No cars passing by, no wind, not even any crickets, just dead silence. I remember noticing how cold it had gotten even though it had been warm all day. It was the kind of cold that makes your skin prickle a bit. So I started pumping gas and I was just kind of zoning out, watching the numbers tick up on the screen. That's when I got this weird feeling like someone was watching me. You know that instinct you get when you just know someone's eyes are on you? It was like that. At first, I thought maybe someone else had pulled in behind me and I just didn't hear it. But when I glanced around, the place was completely empty. No cars, no people, just my car and the gas station. But then I saw something. Across the lot, maybe 30 or 40 feet away, right near the tree line at the edge of the property, there was a man standing there. Not moving, not walking, just standing in the shadows. I couldn't see his face. He was too far back in the dark, but I could tell he was watching me. I don't know how I knew, I just knew. His body was turned just enough to face me. He was tall, kind of lanky, just standing there like he had all the time in the world. I froze for a second. I thought maybe he was just a homeless guy or something, or maybe just some random dude waiting for a ride, but it didn't feel right. There was something off about him. He never moved, not even a little, just stood there like a statue. Trying not to panic, I decided to go inside the station to pay, even though I had my card. I thought maybe if I was inside, I'd feel safer, and maybe the clerk had seen him too. So I walked in, and there was this older guy at the counter, probably in his late 50s. He looked half asleep, sipping coffee, watching some late-night infomercial on the little TV behind the counter. I paid for my gas, and while he was ringing me up, I casually asked, "Hey, do you know who that guy is outside, near the trees?" The clerk looked up at me real quick, like immediately. His face kind of changed. He leaned over the counter a little and said quietly, "You saw him?" I was like, Yeah, he's just standing there. The guy didn't say anything for a second. Then he looked me dead in the eyes and said, "Do not go back out there alone." That's when the hairs on my arms stood up. He didn't sound like he was messing around. He came out from behind the counter and walked to the door, peeking outside through the glass. He squinted like he was trying to spot the guy. "I don't see him now," he said, "but stay here for a minute. Let's give it a second." I stood there, awkward and nervous, trying not to freak out. He watched for a bit longer, then finally said, "Okay, if you're going to go back out, go straight to your car. Don't stop, don't turn around, and don't look behind you." Now, I don't know about you, but when someone tells me not to look behind me, that's all I want to do. But something about the way he said it, it just made my stomach twist. So I thanked him and stepped out the door. My car was just a few steps away, maybe 10 feet. I walked fast, didn't run, but I didn't waste any time either. Got in, locked the doors, started the engine, and I swear to you, I almost looked in my rearview mirror. Almost. But I remembered what he said. I pulled out of that gas station and didn't stop driving until I got home. Heart pounding the whole way. I didn't even look in the mirrors until I was parked in my driveway. Here's the part that still gives me chills. When I got home and got out of the car, I noticed a piece of paper tucked under my windshield wiper. Just a small, folded scrap. I hadn't seen it when I got in the car at the gas station. I opened it up and all it said was, "You're lucky you went inside." No name, no handwriting I recognized. Just that one sentence. I don't know who the man was. I don't know what he wanted or what would have happened if I stayed out there. But I don't stop at random gas stations anymore. Not at night. Not alone.